Is my shepherd. When you think about who your shepherd is, on what basis would you say that you can say that? I ask myself, my wife, I give her credit for teaching me how to ask myself questions. And it all started with this question. Why should someone attend our church? Why? Run away with that thought and think about it. Why should someone attend our church? So I ask the question, who's shepherding my heart? Why should my children say that Jesus shepherds their daddy's hearts? Or their daddy's heart? Why would they say that? Or would they just be quiet? Or would they say, huh, seriously? You see, whoever shepherds the heart has the most influence. Whoever is shepherding your heart this morning, has shepherded your heart this past week, has the most influence on your thought process. Huh? Yeah? Think with me. Who is shepherding your heart? Who shepherds my heart when I'm not sure what to do? You see, Father has me on a journey, and I probably should have known this for a long time, but I'm just learning as I'm on the journey. But the whole chapter of Psalm 23 is all connected. And I'm hoping to sort of do it a little bit of justice, because I'm hoping when I'm done that you can see from the beginning to the end how they're all tied together. They're very dependent on each other. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. How do you make? I'm just going to ask it in a carnal sense, in a visual sense for a moment. How do you make sheep lie down in a green pasture?
Be satisfied with their appetite.
Okay. So he said, be satisfied with what they've got. Okay. How do you get them there? How do you get sheep satisfied with what they got? You show them. Okay, I mean, you're standing there saying, look at you guys. You got grass up to your knees and you're still wanting to crowd out across the fence. You're supposed to be over here laying down. You see, it helps a little bit when we understand how sheep function. They have one stomach and 4 compartments. And until that first compartment is full and the rumination begins, they're not ready to lay down. But when that first compartment is full, it's time to lay down so that rumination can begin and the processing can begin to get each of these compartments filled, right? Okay? You know, this is a little bit like trying to pastor in northern Indiana. The problem is just that pastors don't have, and these illustrations have their limitations, I get that. But when you're pastoring people that have personal choices and they don't have to stay in the boundaries. They have choices to make, and if they get outside those boundaries, they may come to church on Sunday morning and not be filled. They're not even wanting to come to church. And yet he's inviting us to lie down, being content, precisely, being content. And you see, one of the purposes of lying down in a contented state is that it brings us out of our performance mode. He wants us to come apart from our performance mode so we can ruminate. We can bring back, chew on, think about what we've been thinking about. What have you been thinking about this week? This morning? The thoughts I processed later today, ruminate, bring them back and think about, how does that apply to me? You see, I believe it is only when I fail to come out of that performance mode and I'm just go, there's really something I'm going to miss. You know what that is? I'm going to miss that confidence of knowing that comes from when I am still. You see, there's something about being still, being quiet before the Father, that brings an assurance. What does Psalm 46:10 say? Be still and know. Be still and know that I am God. And so the beautiful thing about learning to be content with where I'm at, having the blessings and benefits and look at what I've been blessed with, sit and reflect and see them as a gift from the Father. Allowing your heart to be encouraged, to be strengthened, to be enriched and blessed, and produces a spirit of gratitude. The literal meaning of being still means to cease from striving, stop fighting. Cease from striving, stop to reflect. He leads me beside the it makes me to lie down in the green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. Now think about, how do I bring that spirit of contentment into beside the still waters? Being still and know. The literal meaning for still waters is to rest, to be refreshed. So in a spirit of contentment, a spirit of plenty, in an environment of plenty, I learn to be content. I learn to bring myself in a place to be refreshed, to be strengthened, to be renewed, to be restored. Because He longs to restore my soul. He longs to refresh me. He longs to hear my gratitude, my dependency, my gratitude to Him for how He blessed me with those green pastures, how He blessed me with what I have. He wants to hear my gratitude being given back to Him. The literal meaning behind restore means to bring back, to return to, recover, put back in order. So when you think about whether it's going out in the morning and coming back in the evening during the week, or whether you think about leaving here today and going this week and taking constant time of reflection of how I've been blessed with so much, and as your spirit of gratitude deepens by how you see the Father blessing you with whatever He blessed you with. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it is your intelligence. Maybe it's your charisma. Maybe it's your ability to trust when you don't know how when you don't know how it's going to turn out. Maybe He blessed you with a healthy family. Maybe He blessed you with a beautiful home. You name it. Maybe He blessed you with lots of funds. But as that spirit of reaching back, you see, when you think about God's mercy and His grace being motivated, having motivated Jesus, when Jesus reflected where he came from and where he was going to, was it there where he found strength in time of need? Are you grateful for that? Are you grateful that he shed his blood for you? So that we can follow suit. So that we can sit and read and listen and remunerate on what we've been reading, what we've been studying, how it's applying, and how I'm grateful and how I'm refreshed. We should always have parts of those stories that are the moment being able to share with another. Or maybe ask a brother or sister, what are you ruminating on? How have you been blessed in your spiritual journey? I don't know. What needs would you have this morning maybe that need to be restored? You know, it's that moment. It's that moment when we just take a moment and reflect. What do I need to be restored in? You've been battling all week, faithfully hanging in there. Maybe I don't know what you faced this week. If there's one thing that you would love to just tell Jesus what you need to have restored? Or maybe there's one thing that you would love to express gratitude. Because when we do that, you release serotonin in your brain. Remember? Let's just close our eyes. Father, as we just take this moment to pause and reflect on our spirit, on our gratitude, Father, would you bring to each one of our minds something that we're grateful for this morning from this past week, or just even this morning? When that prompting comes of what you're grateful for, just tell Jesus that. Father, as you walk the journey of life in our hearts and you reflect with us, what is it that each one of our hearts needs a restoration? What would you like to restore? What would you like us to bring to you so you can restore it? Would you prompt us with that just now? Father, our hearts long to have the grace so we can release to you the things we can't control, and also release to you the things we can control, so you can restore our soul, you can restore our mind. You see, when we take moments, just moments to reflect, and you can open your eyes, when we take just moments to reflect, those little moments of what is it he wants to hear. Just like I longed for my daddy to hear, I long to hear from my son what he wants to tell me. That's your shepherd longing to hear what your heart is trying to say. Because you see, this is why he wants to hear it. He longs to lead you in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And when he gets to do that, it's no longer about you and about me. It's all about him. You see, when there is a spirit of gratitude deep within where I understand there is no sense of performance that I could ever do that could add to this righteousness that I have to have, because it's not about me, it's about Him. That should make us the most grateful people ever, because we did nothing for it, and yet we all have to have it. And that should have a spirit of gratefulness on our lips all the day long. Huh? So that I can rest in that. What do those paths of righteousness look for you? You see, not so long ago, the Father and I were in this very moment reflecting. He brought a book in my path that dealt with 5 prepositions that just left me speechless. And the prepositions were how I viewed life. There are 5 that he addresses: life from God, life over God, life under God, life for God, or life with God. And as I was reading and reflecting, I realized I had been doing a lot of things for God. He didn't need me to do something for Him to acquire righteousness. He wanted me to be with Him because of His righteousness. He wants all of us to be with Him for His right, because it's not about what we do. Now, when we understand righteousness, there'll be things we'll do, but it's that motor driving it, not the motor doing it for Him in hopes to just make it inside the door, in hopes to just be good enough, or in hopes that it was good enough. See, those are all perspectives that I'm driven by my experiences. And I remember my failings. Well, if I haven't cleaned them up, then they're going to continually be there. The conscience is going to bother me until I go back and clean them up. But when I clean that up, He wants us to have that restoration, that peace, that deep gratitude, to where when He's leading me, I remember daily, moment by moment, it's not about me. It's all about Him. Huh? Yes. And even though I walk through this valley of shadows everywhere, and I get scared, I'm not going to fear, because I remember how much I have. I remember who's shepherding my heart. I remember how He restored my soul. I remember that it wasn't about me, it was about Him. I remember that it's His righteousness, not mine. So that I am not given to fear, so I don't reflect back to fear and get caught. Because you see, remember what I asked you earlier? Who's shepherding your heart? If you and I reflect to fear, who's shepherding our heart? Maybe you don't find comfort in His rod or staff. There was a long time that I didn't find comfort in His rod or staff, because I didn't associate good things with that at all. Do they reassure you? Are you that dependent? Have you had that kind of conversation where you know He pulls you back when you are getting a bit out of line, or He hedges you in and you're good with that? Or do you find yourself being a little frustrated, a little irked? Those are all moments of surrender that need to surrender, moments of Him shepherding our hearts, or wanting to shepherd our hearts, because He knows that when we resist that, we're headed for trouble. Because we will not only forget what we have, how blessed we are with what we have, we will not only not be able to reach back and have those sweet, precious memories of sitting beside the quiet waters, having our soul refreshed and with the spirit of gratitude of His righteousness and that rest and that joy and that radiance that comes out of that to change the world through you, through me. You see, when He sees you and me falling asleep at the wheel and getting a bit distracted, you know how much He loves you? This much. He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. What? What does that mean? Whose idea? It's His. You see, ladies, when you have a table prepared, sometimes that's called a setting that you've prepared, and you're expecting someone to come and join you as you sit around that table, aren't you? Yeah, you're anticipating. When the Father prepares a table in my setting, in my environment, He is setting me up to see what I do about who wants to sit at my table. And if I have the wrong party sitting at my table, I will have the wrong influence. If I'm negative, if I'm given to fear and worry, if I've forgotten where I come from, if there's a spirit of ingratitude, I'll be murmuring, I'll be complaining. If the guy that in front of me doesn't move fast enough, I'll have words for him. There will be so much negativity that will be coming out of my mouth when I forget or miss the moment of the table in our minute by minute life that unfolds to me. I will forget. When I miss that, He has just prepared a table before me, and I allowed my enemies to come and sit at my table and feed my thoughts with a bunch of negativity that just makes me look like I got ran over, because I did. He doesn't want those enemies sitting at that table. He wants you and me to live out our faith and recognize that even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death and I'm in the midst of my enemies, they're not sitting at my table, because that's not who's shepherding my heart. And you and I determine who sits at your at our table. Who sits at your table? We get to determine that. You see, who gets to sit at my table gets to influence this little screen. Whether I'm given anxiety and worry and fear and depression and all kinds of cortisol released to my bloodstream, or whether there's an internal exuberant amount of joy that just flows, and the serotonin is balancing our body. You and I get to determine that by who sits at our table. You see, He is just waiting for you and me to make that moment decision, because He wants to anoint you with oil. He wants to embody you with His grace. He wants to empower you with the strength it takes to work through that. But you've got to make the decision first who sits at your table. You can't get this grace before you do that. See, when I'm at the moment of needing to humble myself and admit when I messed up, that's the table in front of me at that moment. When I need to go back and apologize to my son, that's the moment. And when I refuse to do that, pride sits at my table. Right? You see, there was a reason why they anointed sheep with oil. There were these little flesh-eating bugs back in the day that want to crawl in under their wool and eat away at their flesh. And that was the whole purpose of an oil mixture that they poured over their head. so those little bugs would not attack their sheep. We got little bugs attacking our sheep today. What little bugs do you need deterred from, or need to deter away? You see, when I make the right decision, and I receive His grace, and joy comes to my heart, then it feels like my cup just runs over. He is just there all the time. He is just there. And His mercy, it just follows me. Do you see how this, from the beginning, continues to flow out of a spirit of gratitude? He brings me. And, you know, you and I choose that spirit of gratitude. We choose that, how we've come out of, live in a rich and plentiful world. And I'll tell you what, I grew up in a temporal value environment. You know what my biggest enemy is? Just go, 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 go. The enemy loves it. Oh, I look successful. I look very productive. People think highly of that. What's the weak downside to that? Running on empty. Too long. And then I miss Him leading me beside the still waters. I miss that restoring, that refreshing of my soul. And then I'm a sitting duck when He prepares a table before me to try to help me recover. Because I'm just given to that negative stuff. I'm just ticked when somebody pulls in front of me. You know what I mean? So I really set myself up step by step, day by day. But when I can reflect on His mercy and how rich His grace is, how rich He's blessed me with, and that those moments of quiet stillness, releasing everything to Him, saying, I want more of You, having my soul refreshed, so that when He leads me in paths of righteousness, that I well remember it's not about me, it's all about Him. That will set me up to keep the right party at my table, to maintain our relationship. Who's at your table? Let's bow our heads. Gracious Father, as we sit quietly here before You and reflect who is at our table, Father, what is it that You need to hear? What is it that we need to say? Father, I'm so grateful this morning that You are a gracious God, a long-suffering God, a God that understands that my tendency is to be given to temporal, carnal perspectives through sometimes the things I see, of the things I want. Father, You know how desperately my heart needs forgiveness day by day. Father, would You teach us what that means to make that our lifestyle, where that sanctification process can happen, where our testimony continues to be built and we grow, where people can sense he's been with Jesus again. He keeps talking about what Jesus is doing in his life, where his heart is, his focus is on his heart. It's not on what can be seen. Oh, Father, teach us what it means to look on our heart where You look. so that our spirit can reflect communion with you. Inner joy that overflows and recognizes your mercy and grace all the day long. Father, I just pray a special blessing on this group of believers as they reflect and ponder and continue to wrestle out the journey that you're walking with them, wanting to walk with them. Father, give them the awareness and the courage to say to you what needs to be said so that that union can be enriching, strengthening, and others may know that they've been with you. And as they go from here today and as they live this week in this Bourbon area, reflecting your love, your grace, your mercy, your generous abundance of goodness. Father, may your truth guide them in life's pathway for your glory. And we pray this through Christ. Amen. Thank you for allowing me the time to spend with you this morning. And I'll turn the time back to Dave.
Thank you, Mel, for coming and sharing.